Hi, welcome back to Screw the Whiffs, which is a channel that I've just begun, really exploring all things related to nervous system sensitization. You guys might call it disordered anxiety, you might call it DPDR, you might call it intrusive thoughts, you might call it panic disorder, you might call it OCD, you might call it sticky brain, you might call it being a worrywart, you might call it being debilitated by fear, you might, any number of these things. But I like to kind of throw it all in one big basket because it actually has more overlap than not. We tend to want to kind of reduce everything down and find all the differences. But the reality is there's a lot more similarity in these things than anything else. And so, today what I want to talk about is basically kind of 4 steps. Just like an easy way to remember, like, what do you do with it? So you've heard me talk on here before about, like, it doesn't matter what brought you to the dance, right? So lots of things can cause sensitization. Lots of things can cause these symptoms. But the reason that you're on this channel, the reason you're probably listening to this is not because you had one panic attack or because you had a strange thought while you were standing at the mouth of the Grand Canyon and thought about, what if I jump or what if I push this person in? And you had that strange intrusive thought. You're probably not listening to this because you had a moment of derealization. We all have that, right? We think about all the times we drive and land in our driveways and aren't sure how we got there. You're not on this channel because you've had an experience, a one-off of something, or even a 2-off. You're on this channel probably because at some point now this has begun to take over your life. You've lost weeks or months or even years now to having been sensitized, what I mean by that is you've become afraid of your mind and your body. Okay, so these tired nerves that can shoot off all these kinds of random thoughts, feelings, and sensations that are disturbing, distressing, uncomfortable, scary. You're watching this now because you've gotten good at being sensitized. You've gotten kind of locked into that as kind of almost like a state. And you're wondering, how am I going to get my life back? And when am I ever going to feel better? And can I ever feel better? And so I'm working to kind of go big picture with all of it. And we'll discuss each of those things, obviously, in different clips and get into the details of things. But at the end of the day, what we have to do is we have to actually make a decision that we are viewing ourselves as being in a sensitized mind or body. That becomes imperative, okay? So again, chances are, if you're listening to this, you're already there, okay? Because most people aren't spending a whole lot of time on YouTube looking stuff up when they've had, one distressing moment or day. When suddenly they're losing weeks, months, years of their lives, they're no longer feeling like themselves, they've lost their confidence, they've lost their joy of life, they're not recognizable to themselves or their families any longer. They're afraid to do things that they loved. They don't even, they feel like a shell of the person they once were. They feel like they're a turtle, like without a shell. They feel like they've got an invisible gunman to their back. They walk around with dread and doom and gloom and all sorts of, again, these kind of anxious symptoms. This is probably who you are as you're listening to this. And so we're going to talk today about kind of this way to deal with your sensitization. Deal with your disordered anxiety, deal with your OCD, deal with the intrusive thoughts, deal with the sticky mind, right? And again, not that it doesn't matter what brought you to the game, whether it was chronic stress or acute stress, or you were kind of always predisposed to be this way and things just tipped over. But again, what is most important is what's keeping it stuck, keeping you stuck, and how to get you off the hamster wheel. So we're going to talk about this in kind of 4 different kind of steps today, but just 4 different ways to think about it. And we're going to use the word deal, DEAL, easy way to remember it, how to deal with my anxiety, my sensitization, my OCD, my stuff. And the first step is to decide. When I've started going through this process and I had to learn firsthand what it was to be in a sensitized nervous system and developed what by all accounts looked like the extreme disordered anxiety or OCD, life started living me. I stopped being in charge. I woke up and scanned for how I felt, and that dictated my day. Usually that didn't go very well. I began to wait for health or mental health to find me again. I began to doubt that I would ever feel like myself again. I began to wonder if maybe I'd always been like this and I was doomed to feel like this for the rest of my life. And the other thing I would do is I would have, anything from like an intrusive thought to a feeling of panic, to a feeling of fear, to my skin burning, to tinnitus, to feeling dizzy, to my eyes being blurry, to headaches, you name it. I've probably had it. And I began to play an endless game of whack-a-mole. And it's endless, right? Because it's like, okay, all right, I got that one figured out. Boom. Okay. Oh, I got that weird thought. Thank God I figured out that weird thought wasn't true. That doesn't mean anything about me. Oh God, why did I just think this? Or why did it come back? Or I feel better now, but now I just feel panicky. Now I'm waking up with a sense of the dreeps. I call the dreeps the dread, doom, depression, and the creeps all rolled into one. And so I wasn't deciding that I was in a sensitized body. I was basically a victim to the process and letting all of these thoughts, feelings, and sensations dictate my life or what there was left of it. And so the first step is really to decide, you know what, I'm in a sensitized state. And again, there's lots of reasons why we get there. We can talk about that. It kind of doesn't matter. Once you're there, it's important that you decide that you are there. I have decided that I am in a sensitized mind and body. And because of that, things can show up in all kinds of different ways. Some people get intrusive thoughts. Some people feel, some people have more of like an OCD type process. Some people have more health anxiety. Some people have more panic attacks and then panic disorder and then agoraphobia, afraid of leaving their safe space. Some people have more depersonalization and derealization. Some people, just live in this body fear where they feel like there's, again, that invisible gunman to their back. Whatever it is, you make the decision, I'm in a sensitized state. And because I've made that decision, I am going to throw all of it into that bucket. Imagine one big bucket in the middle of your room, and it's called sensitization. You can call it the fuck it bucket, you can call it whatever you want, but it is the bucket of sensitization, and it all goes in there. You have made that conscious decision. Now, I get a lot of my information from Claire Weeks. Claire Weeks wrote in the 60s and 70s primarily. She was a physician who actually was really the matriarch of disordered anxiety and sensitization and dealt with, heart palpitations herself, not knowing they were anxiety. And spent 6 months actually in a sanitarium being treated for what they thought was TB. It was actually anxiety. She became, again, a forerunner to all of this thought. And even though she's not often given the credit she deserves, I would welcome you to look her up, encourage you to look her up. But, Claire Weeks would say, and I agree with her, if you're having a strange new symptom, let's say, I don't know, there's a pain in your eye or, a weird thing with your heart or a stomach problem, go and get it checked out. Go to a cardiologist, go to your doctor, go do the thing you need to do. Get your opinion and then stop. Okay. Then anything beyond that. Okay. I've been given a good bill of health here. I know what this is. I know this is my nervous system acting up. Okay, and if you remember, I think in my first video I talked about, our nervous systems are the electrical thumbprint of our bodies, right? Thumbprint meaning they're all unique. No one has the same one. So the symptoms you're going to get are going to be different. The severity of them is going to be different. The duration of them is going to be different. The manifestation of them is going to be different. But it's the electrical system of our body, inside out, head to toe, not a system that is not impacted by our nervous system. Okay? So again, you want to get something ruled out, fine. But then what you're deciding to do is to take this litany of things that are happening. And for some of you, you might say, well, Jennifer, I only have intrusive thoughts. Fine. That's fine. Some people only have one. Some people have a whack-a-mole of 100 things a day. Some people have 50 different thoughts a day that bother them. Some people only have one theme that bothers them. Some people aren't really all that bothered by weird intrusive thoughts or disturbing thoughts. Some people are more disturbed by panic. Some people are more disturbed by feeling unreal. Whatever it is, you're making the decision. So deal, D-E-A-L, decision, decide. I'm in a sensitized nervous system. Therefore, I can fully expect that I could have several hundred different types of weird symptoms, fumes coming off that hot furnace. Then E, okay? I want you to think about, again, how we're dealing with OCD, anxiety, and nervous system sensitization, right? So the E, We're going to decide, and then we're going to evoke. What are we going to evoke? We're going to evoke our non-engagement response. What do I mean by that? Well, again, because I have felt, and I'm sure many of you have, like, we need to do something about this, right? We need to do something about these thoughts, do something about these feelings, do something about these sensations. We're not good at not doing things, okay? But really the way out of this is by leaving it alone. So once we've decided that it's all sensitization and we've stuck it in that big bucket in the middle of our room, then we have to evoke what we call a non-engagement response. A non-engagement response is a very short prompt that is simply there to remind us of this decision we've made. Jennifer, you made a decision that this was all sensitization and that you were going to leave it alone, right? So instead of going through that whole, big monologue in my head every time, I may say something like, it is what it is. I may say something like, leave it alone. I may say something like, it's a misfire, let it burn, right? What do I mean by misfire? What I mean by misfire is that when we're in a sensitized nervous system, our threat response system, that part of us that protects us and shows us threats, it's misfiring. It's turning teddy bears into grizzly bears. It's turning mailboxes into stalkers. Everything feels like a threat when we're in that heightened fight, flight, freeze response, okay? So what we need to do is we need to evoke, that's the E, our non-engagement response. So I want you to think about what is going to be your prompt. And a very short little thing. It could be a shrug of your shoulders. It doesn't even have to be a word. You could be like, oh, well. It's whatever it's a little tiny prompt that reminds you you've made a decision. There's nothing to figure out here. You don't need to revisit this. We don't need to go back to the doctor for the 100th time. We don't need to call that friend for the 1,000th time. We don't need to wonder why the thought morphed a little bit and now it's attacking our dog versus our family member. We don't need to wonder why today we're dizzy when yesterday we felt faint, right? It's that little prompt that reminds you you've already decided. Now you are evoking your non-engagement response. And you may have to do that on bad days 30,000 times a day. Leave it alone. It is what it is. Yeah. One of my friends, Chris, calls it let the clown have his circus. Meaning, a sensitization, OCD, anxiety, whatever you want to call it, is the circus that's in town, right? And so we shouldn't be surprised when there's clowns involved, right? Every circus has clowns. So if the circus is in town, we shouldn't be surprised that we're going to have weird thoughts. We shouldn't be surprised that here's another clown. Here's another clown. Oh my God, why are there so many clowns? Well, because there's a circus next door. That's why there's so many clowns, right? So we want to evoke a non-engagement response that reminds us we've already decided. So remember when I said a second ago, it felt like or that my symptoms were living me. What our goal is here, our goal is to flip the narrative. Our goal is not to initially get rid of symptoms. That would be lovely and ideal and will happen. But our goal is that I have symptoms, but the symptoms don't have me. That is our new script. That is our new narrative. The initial narrative for me and many others was, I have symptoms and the symptoms are ruining my life. The symptoms not only have me, but they're, pummeling me and sucker punching me. So we're evoking that non-engagement response to remind ourselves that we've already made a decision that we're not doing this anymore. We're not playing this game anymore. Your non-engagement response could be drop the rope, drop the mic, leave it alone, let it be. Whatever you want it to be, a short prompt. So again, D is decide, E is evoke your non-engagement response. A in deal is allow. Just because you've reminded yourself, leave it alone, let it go, let it burn, let it be, it is what it is, does not mean that the panic's going to subside. It doesn't mean that the thoughts are going to leave you alone. It doesn't mean that the fear is going to go away. It doesn't mean that the agitation or irritation or the feeling of dread is going to dissipate necessarily. We all want to do things to get rid of things. And when we do that, we actually are going to feed the monster. Okay, we're gonna feed that fire when we do that. So you're going to decide, then you're going to evoke your non-engagement response. You're going to allow the thoughts, feelings, and sensations to be there. Let them be there. They're not going to go away. because you've told them to. They're not going to go away because you have some magic prompt. And that's the other thing. When they don't go away right away, you're going to think, I didn't use the right prompt. I got to come up with a better non-engagement response. I better use let it burn. I'll use that. I did this for months. Well, none of this is going away, so I must not be using the right prompt. No, the prompt is only there to remind myself you've made a decision how you're going to handle this. You're going to leave it alone. Let it be. Get out of its way. And then I'm going to allow for all the stuff to just be there. And then not the most important part, but just as important is the L in deal, which is then live your life. And this is where I talk about getting an Academy Award for being a non-anxious Jen, for being a non-sensitized Jennifer. What would non-sensitized Jennifer be doing today? Would she be laying in bed, staring at a wall, being scared of all the weird sensations in her body? Or would she be up writing a chapter in her book? Would she be making a phone call? Would she be going to see a family member? Would she be going to the grocery store? Would she be cleaning the house? And then I'm going to work to do that thing. Okay? Deal. Decide. Evoke your non-engagement response. Allow the thoughts, feelings, and sensations to be there and live your life. Now, you might say to me, well, what do you mean live your life? Like, I don't feel like me. How can I live my life? And why would I do that? I feel terrible. Well, if you think about what I said a second ago about our threat response system being, out of whack, right? In a sensitized state, part of what's going on is our threat response system, our amygdala, and all of its accordant properties that I talked about, I think, in episode 1, are lit up. They're misfiring. There's a dysfunction there right now, okay? And what does that mean? It means that everything feels creepy. Everything feels distorted. Everything has the potential to scare us. Everything has the potential to be to create panic. Everything feels catastrophic. Everything feels all or nothing. Okay? And that's what a threat response does. It was meant to be there to protect us. It is now misfiring. And so the reason why you live your life, it goes back to something I said, I think, in the first video, is because that threat response system, that amygdala and all of its accordant pieces and parts and complementary parts, that whole limbic system, okay, that's meant to protect us, that is now misfiring and malfunctioning, does not speak English. You sitting there telling yourself, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. No. All that limbic system hears, all that threat response system hears is, wow, Jennifer looks really freaked out. She keeps telling herself it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. But it can't hear it's going to be okay. It just hears you reacting to it. It hears you throwing worry at it, and it's watching you. Most importantly, it's watching your behavior. It doesn't speak the language. So if you're saying it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay while you're cleaning the kitchen, great, because it's seeing you clean the kitchen. If you're saying it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay while you're rocking in your bed in a ball, waiting for mental health to come find you, it's watching you rock in a ball on your bed. And it's thinking, wow, she's really scared. There must really be danger. I must be onto something. Let me keep sending this. And here comes the cortisol, and here comes the adrenaline, and all that stuff hits that tin can of a nervous system and increases sensitization and perpetuates the OCD. It perpetuates the anxiety, perpetuates the intrusive thoughts, perpetuates the panic. So decide that you're in a sensitized nervous system. Evoke your non-engagement response. Come up with a good one. If you want help with that, reach out to me. If you guys are interested in doing some coaching, reach out to me through my website at jenniferswanphd.com. It's in the notes there, and we can see if I'd be a good fit. I'm not a good fit for everybody. But if we're a good fit, I'm happy to help you think about this. Allow. Just because you engage that response and have decided it's sensitization does not mean it's going to go away automatically. It's going to take some time. Allow it to be there and then live your life. Why? Because it's watching you. The part of your nervous system that is acting up, that's causing all this distress, is watching you. What are you going to do? Are you going to hide? Are you going to run? Are you going to seek reassurance? Are you going to show up at the ER for the 400th time? Are you going to cry? Are you going to scream? Are you going to beg it to go away? Are you going to hurt yourself? Your body, your nervous system is watching you. and it's taking your cues. If it's watching you live your life, it's like, wow, Jennifer's out shooting baskets. Jennifer just took the dog for a walk. Jack just, made himself a sandwich. Jen just walked in there and said, I love you to somebody. Joey just walked in there and started writing his book. It's watching you. And there's no way that you're in danger if you're writing a book, if you're shooting baskets, if you're making a picnic, if you're cleaning your kitchen. You're probably not under attack. And so we've got to help those tired nerves. We've got to help it. And that's how we help it. Decide that it's sensitization, and then follow that through. Evoke the non-engagement response, allow it to be there, and live your life. I hope this was helpful, guys.